Good morning, everyone. If I could invite you to come in, take your seats, we will begin day 2. We had an awesome day 1 and look forward to an even better day 2. So thank you for being here and welcome to day 2 of our CRWUA conference. Again, express gratitude to our program committee, to those who participated yesterday and who will participate today. And most of all, for your interest in this great organization and the cause we're all about. So, as we begin this morning, I'd like to start off with a bit of a quiz. And I want to ask you what these things have in common. Colorado River Water Users Association, United Nations, Tom Selleck, the mass production of Volkswagen Beetle. We are all 80 years old this year. Okay? Volkswagen Beetle. And to be frank, I think I've still seen some of those 80-year-old Beetles floating around. Most of them are up on jacks, though. They're not functional. So, I feel proud of what this organization offers to 40 million people who depend on us for water. We can all be proud of 80 years of expertise, hope, coordination, and conflict resolution. CRWUA has united and educated us all. Entire generations have now grown up and thrived with our projects and care, and will continue as we solve problems, as we continue to build a civilization equal to the magnificent landscape in which we live. I would invite you all now to watch this short video that talks about the Colorado River Water Users Association 80th anniversary. So we'll play the video now, and then I'll get back up and introduce our speakers for this morning.
The mighty Colorado. The flows that shape, that sustain and drive an entire region. An age-old story as vast, as vibrant and diverse as the places this great river runs through. A story of collaboration, connecting one generation to the next. For more than 80 years now, the Colorado River Water Users Association, known as CRWUA, has helped unite water leaders in the West, driving progress hard-won in the face of immense challenges. Today, that conversation is more urgent than ever. Today, so much is riding on this river, on the ability of all of us to find a sustainable solution for its future, because what happens here matters to 40 million people across the West and Mexico, thousands of communities from one-road towns to megacities, dozens of sovereign tribal nations, global industry, small businesses, some of the most productive agricultural regions in the world, native species, and miles upon miles of wilderness, including some of the world's most beloved national parks. And it isn't just the West. Sustaining the Colorado is essential for the health of the entire U.S. economy. So yes, these are high stakes. It's the reality water users in the upper and lower basin states live with every day. For 80 years, CRWUA has been a place for people passionate about the Colorado River to convene, a place to exchange ideas and frustrations, a place to find common ground. One thing is clear to everyone: the river we all rely on has less water. Megadrought and climate change have pushed us toward great uncertainty. How bad will it get? How best to share this river? How best to manage it? Answers that will fundamentally impact tens of millions of people and our nation's economy. And yet, there are encouraging signs of collaboration, of reason for hope. Across some 400 miles in the lower basin, the Multi-Species Conservation Program is protecting more than 24 endangered, threatened, or sensitive species and their habitats. In the upper basin, there's the Colorado River Connectivity Channel, a linchpin connecting restoration efforts supporting declining aquatic species. And there's more, much more. Urban and agricultural partners are working together to share and exchange water. Residents and businesses are saving water with turf removal programs. Farmers are using cutting-edge technology to grow more food with less water than ever before. There is investment up and down the entire system. Like the Navajo Gallup Water Supply Project, hundreds of miles of pipeline bringing reliable water to the 250,000 in the Navajo Nation. And large-scale water recycling projects, leveraging partnerships to build new drought-proof water supplies that future generations can depend on. It will, of course, take much more to navigate the unprecedented challenges of climate change and aging infrastructure, to find consensus amidst all this uncertainty, to sustain the communities, farms, and environment that all rely on this incredible, vast Colorado River system. Let that critical work continue here at CRWUA. For 80 years, through changes in hydrology, evolving politics, and transformed communities, CRWUA has remained at the heart of all we do because of the dedication of its members. CRWUA's history must also be its future. Progress forged with determination and hard-won agreement, no matter how difficult it comes. This is the road ahead we must collectively face for the future of the West.
Thank you. Very, very well done. My hat's off to many who have made tremendous efforts to put this video together, particularly Crystal Thompson and our Public Affairs Committee for great work. Let's give them another round of applause. Thank you. Thank you, and I'm honored at this point to introduce Andrea Travnicek, Assistant Secretary for Water and Science with the Department of the Interior. Dr. Travnicek was sworn in as the U.S. Department of the Interior Assistant Secretary of Water and Science in September of 2025. Prior to this Senate-confirmed role, she served as Senior Advisor to Interior Secretary Doug Burgum and served as a member of his cabinet when he was governor of North Dakota. She led the North Dakota Department of Water Resources as the first director, overseeing the management of water resources for the state through water development, regulatory responsibilities, planning, education, and safety. She was also appointed by Governor Burgum to oversee the North Dakota Parks and Recreation Department. In this director position, she managed public lands associated with the department, including 13 state parks and 2 recreation areas. Prior to the Parks and Recreation appointment, she worked for the Department of the Interior in various leadership roles since 2017, including Department Assistant Secretary, Deputy Assistant Secretary for Lands and Mineral Management, and Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary for both Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, and Water and Science, serving as acting Assistant Secretary in both roles. She also has experience in the nonprofit and private sectors. Andrea holds a PhD in Natural Resources Management Communication from North Dakota State University, where her research focused on social networks and stakeholders associated with the lake management in Minnesota. She earned her master's and undergraduate degrees from NDSU in Natural Resources Management. Her master's research was conducted in Theodore Roosevelt National Park. In addition to being a college athlete, she received the Distinguished Alumni Award from NDSU's College of Agriculture, Food Systems, and Natural Resources in 2016, and the Horizon Award from NDSU in 2023. Andrea has over 20 years of research and work experience within the natural resources, energy, agricultural, trade, national security, disaster response and recovery, communications, aviation, recreation, and public policy fields. I don't know that there are many other fields that could have been included there. She has negotiated water issues at the state, federal, international, and tribal level. Andrea's extensive background also includes diverse international experience working on trade-related matters. And on a personal note, I would like to express gratitude to her for her leadership as we navigate the post-26 negotiations. Appreciate the great work she's doing there. So with that, I would like to introduce to you Assistant Secretary of Water and Science, Dr. Andrea Travnicek.
I have to stand on a box. I'm a little too short. So, well, good to see everybody this morning. So great to be with all of you. Well, let me begin by expressing, of course, it was great to see Jean up here. I appreciate that, the recognition, and I'm just so excited to be working with you. So thank you for your steadfast leadership and for leading this great conference. On behalf of President Trump and Secretary Burgum, I want to thank the Colorado River Water Users Association for again hosting this important gathering and for the opportunity to speak with you today. Congratulations on 80 years of bringing perspectives from around the basin together. That was a great video. It was really fun to see all that and the work that went into that. To each of you in this room, water managers, tribal leaders, state officials, agricultural producers, conservationists, and community advocates, thank you for all that you do. Your dedication to the basin, your willingness to engage in difficult conversations, and your persistence in seeking solutions are what make progress possible. I agree with what Jean said yesterday, actually. Water managers are truly some of the best people. It's an honor to work with you and be in the arena with you. I know many of you in the room, but still I have more of you to meet. For those that don't know me, I figured I'd give a little bit more of a background about myself to start. I know that you got quite the introduction on that resume, and hopefully you also understood the bleeding the green and gold of Go Bison. But I grew up in a military family where we moved every 3 years throughout the western United States, but spent most of our time in North Dakota and remained close to our family ties in northwestern Minnesota, where my mom is an enrolled member of White Earth Nation. In fact, my grandma still lives about a mile south of the reservation and still provides access to tribal members to harvest wild rice on the lake that adjoins her property. I grew up in a family of service that has respect for conservation and management and recognition of varying perspectives and cultures. These foundations have guided my leadership style throughout my entire career. I've been fortunate over the past 20 years to work on natural resource issues that include species management, land management, and water management. I have worked in the federal, I've worked in the nonprofit, private, and public sectors, both state and federal. And I've consulted with tribal nations, worked with landowners and industries, and worked with international neighbors. Specifically in relation to water management, I've been involved with planning and constructing infrastructure projects, reviewing and approving water rights, operating outlets and reservoirs, and negotiations with tribal nations, states, international partners, and the federal government. For example, in North Dakota, I have been in leadership roles through record floods and drought conditions across several river basins in the state, including the Missouri River Basin that is shared by 7 basin states, and the Souris River, which is shared by Saskatchewan, North Dakota, and Manitoba. Both river basins are also shared by tribal nations, federal partners, industries, and producers. Each basin being governed by various laws, acts, guidance documents, and treaties that are interpreted differently depending on role, responsibility, and perspective. Does that sound familiar? Through all of the water negotiations I participated in, there are a few themes that have led to successful negotiations. Listening and learning from others, being smart on your interpretation of the laws, acts, guidance documents, and treaties, and remaining at the table, right? There's no getting out of the shared watershed that we're all in. And most of all, a genuine willingness to compromise if you don't want to go to litigation. You can't just put a stake in the ground and not provide a range for that stake to move in. You also must negotiate in good faith, negotiating with the real intention to reach an agreement, not just remaining at the table just to delay, obstruct, or appear to cooperate. I realize I've been sworn in as the Assistant Secretary at the time where the country is watching every move that is being made in the Colorado River Basin. I join all of you in the arena as we set an example of how to do more with less during these historic drought conditions. This is my 6th time attending CRWUA, and at each time I arrive with the excitement of seeing familiar faces, meeting new friends, learning something new, and finding opportunities for collaborations. I truly appreciate the time spent with tribal nations and partners so far this week, and I, along with the Reclamation team and the Secretary, are committed to following up on the requests that have been received so far. I also look forward to accepting the invitations to get out of Washington, D.C., and spend time seeing firsthand the challenges and successes that are taking place within your communities. Furthermore, being here at CRWUA this year means more time to spend with the 7 Basin State Commissioners and the constituents they represent. Since being sworn in at the end of September, I have joined Scott and the Reclamation team in several 7 Basin States negotiation meetings. I've seen firsthand the perspectives that each commissioner brings to the table, each time with the goal of representing all of you. And I hope that you will be proud to know that they are doing just that. Many of the perspectives are shared across all 7 Basin States. A shortage exists. Conservation needs to occur. Economic development needs to continue. Yet clearly, some differences still remain since a 7-Basin consensus agreement has not been made. Everyone in this room knows the 2007 interim guidelines are expiring, and the system will be in the last year of operations under the current agreement that expire in 2026. A deadline of February 14th has been set by the Department of the Interior so that all the elements of an agreement can be developed in a timely manner to meet operation needs by next fall. We know that some states need to pass legislation in relation to the agreement. Mexico needs to be involved. Tribal nations need to be consulted, and Congress may need to pass legislation as well. Therefore, I have an ask of all of you. Give your state representatives room to negotiate. We all know some of the risks that may come with that, but they will be shared risks across the basin. They have each done a great job of placing a stake in the ground that you all have asked of them. But time is of the essence, and it is time to be able to adjust those stakes to arrange so compromises can be made. Give them your trust so they can make decisions. It is time for the commissioners to remain at the table to continue the hard discussions all the way to conclusion so that a 7-state consensus agreement can be reached. And if that can't be done, all we need to know sooner than later, will the 7-state commissioners meet the deadline without further delay? The time for grandstanding and rhetoric is past. The river will not wait for us. Everyone has seen the 24-month outlook that came out on Monday, and there is no reprieve in sight. I get it. CRWUA is the perfect platform to frame messages that serve your specific stakeholders' needs and wants to make headlines. Well, I took an oath to all of you. Not one state, not one tribe, not one landowner. So what I'm asking again today is to give your commissioners room to negotiate and room to compromise. And if you can't do that, send us representatives that have the authority to best serve your interests, but are willing to break through the barriers to get to a consensus deal. The time for serious negotiations is now. Including today, there are 60 more days until we reach February 14th. For the past 2.5 months, I've listened, I have learned, I've become smart on the law of the river, the various acts, and the guidance documents that have framed the management of the Colorado River for over 100 years. And I have studied the parts of the Colorado River system that have been built by the federal government and the various authorities that are associated with them. The Reclamation team and I will continue to show up with a genuine willingness to compromise to avoid litigation. And we will continue to be respectful and thoughtful as the 7 states come to the table as the federal government has limited available options. We know that the states have a lot of different tools in the toolbox than we do. But we also recognize we have a federal system to operate and maintain to the best of our abilities because there are federal authorities that do exist, including the role of the Water Master, of who I will continue to advise to the best of my abilities. I have the utmost respect for the 7 state commissioners and where we are all at in the process. But the Department of the Interior recognizes a shrinking timeline is in front of us. In order to operate under a new potential agreement, the department is committed to still releasing a draft EIS around the end of the year. That's the fun talking point. We'll be at the end of the last week in December or first week in January, so we're working through that. It's coming out though. But in the draft EIS, there will be several alternatives that will include various scenarios, which will give the entire basin decision space for what an agreement might look like. We appreciate the thoughtfulness and the ideas that have been shared already by many of you that have led to the development of the draft that will come out. And we look forward to hearing more comments and feedback once it is released. Furthermore, we look forward to meeting with Mexico today. I'm really excited about that. It's looking forward to it. I was actually here when Minute 323 was signed, so that was one of my first things on the job when I was the acting assistant secretary in 2017. But we're looking forward to those conversations as we reach related to the post-2026. But at the end of the day, overall though, at the end of the day, decisions need to be made on the operations of the Colorado River system. It's just not a matter of those decisions will be made in a collaborative manner. Will they be made by the federal government, or will we end up in litigation? So far though, on a light note, this basin has always had historic success in working together to develop consensus agreements. And I do still remain hopeful that we can get there. I want again want to thank all of you for your leadership. It's just really excited to be here in front of you and be able to take part in this. So many great leaders in the room, so many great ideas to bring forward still. But I thank you for your commitment to being innovative and collaborative, and most of all for the trust that you place in all of us. I also want to thank the Reclamation team for their continued dedication to the mission and the people that they serve every day. It really is an honor to serve with all of you. Just glad to be at the table. So those are my messages. I know that there's been a lot of eyes on the Department of the Interior and Reclamation. So just wanted to be clear that, we're not just facilitating. We are working to lead. We are committed to whatever the next steps are. We're hoping that we can get to a consensus agreement, but we've done our homework as well. So we look forward to continuing to work with you. So thank you very much. Have a good rest of the day. I know you're going to hear from some more of our team members, and we've got a lot more meetings. It's day 2 of half-hour meeting after half-hour meeting, but this truly is one of my favorite conferences. That's why after I left the Trump administration, the first time I made sure to still show up and be in the arena with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Assistant Secretary Travnicek. Good morning. My name is Peter Soeth with the Department of Interior Office of Communications, and it's my pleasure to introduce our next speakers. First this morning is Carly Jerla. Carly is a Senior Water Resource Program Manager with the Bureau of Reclamation. She is currently leading reclamation efforts to develop updated long-term operating rules for Lake Powell and Lake Mead, what we all know as the post-26 process. She is currently stationed at the University of Colorado's Center for Advanced Decision Support for Water and Environmental Systems, known as CRWUA, alongside Reclamation's Upper and Lower Colorado River Basin regions research, planning, and modeling teams. She's a graduate of Carnegie Mellon University and the University of Colorado. Carly has worked for the federal government, primarily with Reclamation, for over 20 years. Carly?
Thank you, Peter. Okay, I wore my tall shoes today, so I don't know if I need this box over here. All right. Okay, thank you. Let's make sure the PowerPoint is up and running here.
And then there's the...
Okay. Is there any chance I can see the PowerPoint on the screen in front of me? That would be really helpful. Okay, so maybe while that's getting worked out, I'll just start by thanking Peter for the introduction, saying good morning to everyone. It's an honor to be here again, to be able to speak with you on, I think we all know is what is the most important conference every year in the Basin. Thank you for your hospitality to CRWUA, and thank you for the opportunity to be here again. I think to state the obvious, we have a lot going on in the Basin. There's really never a dull moment in this basin, but it seems like this year is an extra special one. We are operating in we've entered it for Powell, not for Meade quite yet, in what will be our final year of operations, our 19th year of operations under our existing agreements. We're monitoring the forecast, and we're seeing not a great start to water year 2026. It's still early in the year, but the way things are setting up isn't looking good. I left my house 5:30 in the morning. I live about 6,000 feet elevation in Rocky Mountains. It was 65 degrees after about a spell of 2 weeks of 60 degrees. So it's not a great setup. We are, as the Assistant Secretary laid out, working feverishly to try to achieve a basin consensus for how we're going to operate this system, and the time is not in our favor. We have less than 10 months before we find ourselves in water year 2027, so we need that consensus. And then on top of that, we're working to put out a draft EIS in the coming weeks. It's 2.5 years in the making, and it's going to provide a very wide range, but not identify a preferred alternative for how we can move forward in this basin. So a lot going on. Okay, I was hoping that would get us there. So I am... Okay, so someone... Thank you. Sorry for the delay here. Okay. So in this talk, I'm going to weave all of these things together. I'm going to highlight current, future, past operations, what we've learned, what we've seen through those operations, the agreements that we've put in place to adapt to those changing conditions and build those operations, and then how we're using that to formulate and approach our publication of the draft EIS. 2 reasons, of course, insights of what we've seen historically can be important in how we think about the future, and we want to provide some context for you all as you're reviewing our draft EIS that will be available here in the coming weeks. So I'm going to start out by looking at what we've experienced this year in terms of operations. So let me set the stage just for a minute with the graphics here. You can obviously see the map of the basin, and then we have our 2 teacups, one for Lake Powell, one for Lake Mead. I've highlighted here where we ended the year last year, or really started this year in terms of the state of those 2 reservoirs. Powell was at 37% full, Mead at 33% full. And I've also highlighted what are some critical elevations for us. 3490 at Lake Powell is where we lose the ability to generate power and have to rely solely on the river outlet works to make releases out of Lake Powell. And at Lake Mead, at 1035, we start to lose the ability to generate hydropower, a significant loss, not a complete loss, on the order of 70% or so. And then by 950 feet, we've lost the ability to generate hydropower at Hoover Dam. So important elevations to keep in mind. So the first thing happens, inflow into the system. For 2025, we were at roughly 56% of average, so not a great year. This is unregulated inflow, so this takes into account upper basin water use is factored into this, the value here. According to the interim guidelines, we released 7.48 million acre feet out of Lake Powell, and then in terms of lower basin and Mexico water use, we were at about 7.2 million acre feet. So this does not include losses in the lower basin. This is strictly measured water use between the lower basin states and Mexico. This had the impact of reducing Powell. Powell dropped significantly down to 28% full. So that's where we currently sit at Lake Powell elevation. And Lake Mead stayed pretty steady. The reduction in water use due to the interim guideline shortages, the DCP contributions, and the significant amount of conservation in the lower basin was effective at stabilizing Lake Mead elevations given the 7.48 release that was coming in from Powell. So this was a pretty orderly year in terms of operations, although it's the start of what could be, as we'll see when we look at some of the historical hydrology, these sequences of dry years that can really put the system into an untenable position. So now as we think about where we're headed for 2026 operations, there's uncertainty here. There's uncertainty in terms of the inflow forecast, of course. There's uncertainty in terms of Powell release and the water use in the lower basin, but we make assumptions and run our projections to give us an insight of the types of ranges we might see. So we do this, we publish a most probable, a min probable. These are inflow forecasts are coming from our River Forecast Center. That's a branch off of the National Weather Service. We don't come up with these. The minimum, it does not represent the minimum possible. It's a 10th percentile value, and we publish these alongside the full range of potential inflows. So Min probable is coming in at 44% of average. Another potentially very dry year. Again, it's early, but things aren't setting up well. This would translate into probably a 748 million acre foot release out of Lake Powell. We have some asterisks here to recognize that there are consultation discussions underway for potential operational modifications due to the Drought Response Operating Agreement. So that's the DROA agreement that allows for additional releases from those upper initial CRISP units into Lake Powell if triggered, in addition to consultations under the amendment to the interim guidelines, the 2024 amendment that allows for further releases from Lake Powell down to 6 million acre feet if needed to protect reservoir elevations. So those, as we're monitoring the forecast and how the lake's responding, we're in consultations already thinking about what additional actions need to be happening. In terms of Lower Basin and Mexico water use, we're looking at, again, significantly below the 9.0 million acre feet apportionment and allocations in the Lower Basin, coming in at roughly 7.6, 7.8. We're a little higher under the minimum probable just because of the assumptions about the use of ICS. Just wanted to flag that. Where could we end up? At Lake Powell, we're likely to lose more elevation. And in our minimal probable scenario, that's where we see this potential decline below the minimum power pool. Again, talks and consultation are already underway per these agreements to make adjustments to avoid this happening, but it's coming at us fast. At Lake Mead, we're declining as well, but still not quite hitting that first important elevation for us, which is that significant loss of hydropower. So as we're kind of working through all of the different activities this year, the publication of the NEPA documents, the continuing to find consensus in the basin, and exercising the final year of operations under the existing agreements, these are the types of challenges that are facing the basin. I wanted to then kind of step back and sort of look at how our operations and these agreements have played out over the past 19 years that these have been in place. So on the top here, we have the unregulated inflow into Lake Powell and how that has changed over the years. And we've highlighted some highs and lows. But on average, we've seen this decline, and I think we all recognize this. And compared to our long-term average, we're looking at a 14, 15% decline during this period. Over the course of this year, we've implemented the guidelines, made a range of releases from Lake Powell. On average, we've released on about 8.6 million acre feet. And in the last couple years have really been hanging in that 7.48 range in that mid-elevation balancing tier, but utilizing some of the flexibility within those existing agreements to make adjustments as warranted by changing conditions. The elevations in the two reservoirs have sort of hovered around not recovering, but not quite tipping into crisis mode. And we're always just a couple dry years away from really tipping into crisis mode in the basin, and then we kind of miraculously get a reprieve of a wet year. You can see how that really played out in 2022, where we were 2022, 2023, we were hitting kind of the lowest elevations since filling in Lake Powell and Lake Mead. We had to utilize some of the flexibility within the existing agreements to kind of step out of those agreements and make some consensus decisions about doing things differently to protect the system. And then luckily we were followed by an improvement in hydrology. You can see sort of a similar setup to what we're experiencing now in terms of the low elevations, the low projections of runoff coming in from next year, sort of really at our last year together operating under existing agreements, kind of stretching the flexibilities and the bounds and the stability for which those agreements provide. Last thing I want to point out is then lower basin and Mexico water use and how this has trended over this period. So we have seen a decline in water use, particularly in the last several years. There's been a lot of conservation activity in the lower basin. There has been shortages and DCP contributions, obviously, that have been going on in the past several years as well. On average, we've seen 8.4, 8.5 million acre feet lower basin and Mexico average water use. Last thing I want to flag here is then all of these agreements that we've managed to adopt in sequence to these changing conditions to provide this basin the stability to manage through this and to find innovative solutions going forward. And this is kind of really setting the stage then for where we may find ourselves down the road. So I wanted to just kind of reflect on some of the important considerations that come out of those existing agreements and what we have learned that we may apply for going forward. I think first and foremost, we've all benefited from having objective operational criteria for the full range of elevations to operate this system. While there's always uncertainty in inflows and projected water use, we know that certain elevations and certain conditions will require X type of reductions or activity, and those are so helpful for Reclamation to use in our planning and to provide projections for you all as you learn and incorporate that into your water use planning. This has just been so important in providing stability to the basin. I think that the second point is that providing ourselves the ability to make changes based on operational experience has been extremely important. We adopted the existing guidelines for a long period, but not a permanent period. And while we're coming on fast at the expiration of these existing guidelines, we're probably all thankful these weren't in for a permanent period of time, and there wasn't any opportunity to really deviate and take this on again. Flexibility. While we want operation for a full range of operations, criteria for a full range of operations, we want to preserve ourselves the flexibility to come back to the table, to do reviews, to make consensus adjustments if needed. I think our experience in 2022 was an important application of this flexibility. Fourth, obviously more robust measures are needed. The trend in the declining inflow into the system, the likelihood for persistent dry conditions in the future just indicate that more robust measures are needed to fully protect those critical reservoir elevations. And sort of what comes with that then is enhanced flexibility and transparency for all water users to be able to best manage the resource. Expanded participation in conservation is needed. I think we all saw the benefits of the interim intentionally created surplus program in the lower basin, but as we learned through a review of that program, there's opportunities to better that to be able to allow for expanded participation. And we also want to expand participation of a program in the upper basin to allow for storage of conservation and contributions in Lake Powell as well. And lastly, in terms of the role of the federal government, and obviously Assistant Secretary Travnicek set this up well, we want to continue to facilitate but not dictate these operations. The goal here is to inform decision makers and encourage parties to adopt agreements that put consultation and negotiation first in terms of addressing controversies rather than resorting to litigation. I think that last point, the importance of that can't be overstated. I mean, if we look back to the interim guidelines and all of these agreements, and things have worked and things have not worked, but through all of that, the stability that the system has because of the agreement to first look to consultation and negotiation before litigation is the reason we haven't descended into litigation thus far. Okay, so looking forward, we are 2.5 years or so into a public NEPA process to develop successor guidelines to the 2007 interim guidelines. This figure here is showing the overarching timeline. On the top, we have the opportunities for public comment, and on the bottom, we're calling out what those key NEPA milestones are. We kicked this off in June of 2023, and we have spent roughly 2 years trying to come up with this range of draft EIS alternatives. As the Assistant Secretary said, we're eager to put this draft EIS out on the streets here. It's coming in the coming weeks or so, and then we will have an open public comment period, take that information in, and use that to prepare our final EIS to get us to a record of decision in time for 2027 operations. Just a little bit about our approach. Probably all of you have heard us say ad nauseum this emphasis on creating a broad range of alternatives. I'm going to say it here again. This has been of the utmost importance, but we didn't approach this by just sort of picking extreme ends for all of these different operational components. We really went about this by taking input over the last almost 2 years from you all, whether public input through pre-scoping, to consultations, to meetings, to letters that were sent to try to craft a broad range that really reflects the ideas on how to operate the system from you all. We will not be identifying a preferred alternative, but we anticipate the identification of that between the draft and the final. In terms of the technical approach, we are adopting this approach that allows for sort of the full incorporation of the uncertainty in the basin, whether it's from hydrology, that's obviously the most critical factor in terms of uncertainty, but also water use and where the reservoirs may be starting. We've adopted an approach that allows to really unpack all of the uncertainty in those items and apply a technique that doesn't get us sort of caught in this trap of assigning probabilities in terms of specific things happening. It's called decision making under deep uncertainty. I know we've been talking to the basin about that for several years. So you're going to see that featured in this draft. It's going to look probably pretty different from what you all are kind of used to seeing. But we will undertake meetings, consultations, public presentations, and ways to try to make this more easily digestible. And we've applied this technique to the full range of resources that we're analyzing in the draft EIS. So I think we have 17 different resource categories. So it's a very thorough document in terms of analyzing these alternatives and what it could mean to all of the resources on the system. So my second to last slide here is just to give you a kind of a flavor of the components that comprise these alternatives. I think last year when I spoke to you all, I provided a pretty detailed overview of what was in our alternatives. The same factors are at play here, and we're seeking the same range in terms of these different components. So across the top row, we have the main elements out of the proposed federal action that comprise an alternative. You have your shortage guidelines in terms of lower basin reductions. You have your coordinated operations. How are you going to operate Lake Powell? You have your storage and delivery mechanism for conserved water that can be in Lake Mead or Lake Powell or Lake Powell, and then any additional activities above Lake Powell that may be considered. There's also the need for surplus guidelines in the lower basin, but that's not included in here because there's not as much emphasis put on that. In terms of shortage guidelines, all of these components, what triggers the shortage, what volume or what elevation or at what value of that trigger does the shortage start, what's the maximum volume of that shortage, and then how is that shortage distributed in the lower basin? Is it via the priority system or is it via something different? We've tried to look at a range of all of those things. On the coordinated reservoir side, there's questions about what do you consider when you make Powell's release? Are you just looking at Powell's elevation and maybe Mead's elevation as it is now, or are you basing that release on what you've seen in historical hydrology, or maybe what the total system storage looks like? All of those things are varied within these alternatives. Approach to coordination. Are we doing a full coordination of the system, or are we looking at a more minimal approach to coordinating the operation of the two reservoirs? On the storage and delivery mechanism side, we vary how pre-2027 ICS that will be stored in Lake Mead when we enter the post-2026 operations, how that is factored into what a new program may look like. We vary the size of this new program, whether it's operationally neutral or not. That means, is that volume considered when we're making determinations about lower basin water conditions? And then what flexibilities exist in terms of exchanges, interstate, interbasin, intrastate flexibilities. That's varied throughout these alternatives. And the last thing I'll just talk through is on additional activities above Powell. We vary how the upper initial CRISP units are used in protecting Glen Canyon Dam infrastructure. We have storage mechanisms in Lake Powell that are varied. There's still the operational neutrality question that's varied as well. And then how much conservation is occurring in the upper basin and how that's factored in to that mechanism in Powell and potentially released to the lower basin. So it's all of these critical components helped identified by you all, the values helped identified by you all that we've really tried to put together into a range of alternatives. So in closing, I will just say that we've seen challenging hydrologic conditions in the basin. We're likely to see more going forward. If we can learn anything from what we've experienced over the last 18 years, we probably would have descended into some type of crisis in the basin had it not been for the collaboration, the consensus-based approach by the tribes, states, Mexico, in terms of coming up with adaptive solutions. But we know we need more going forward, and we've set up a draft EIS that reflects a range of carefully crafted alternatives to enable the further innovation and the ability of the basin to come to a consensus agreement to be able to adopt in time for the 2027 operations. So with that, I want to say thank you and enjoy the rest of your CRWUA.
Thank you, Carly. It's now my pleasure to introduce Reclamation's Acting Commissioner, Scott Cameron. With a strong background in water resources policy and programs, Cameron has dedicated his career to enhancing the efficiency and effectiveness of government. He previously held various leadership roles at Interior, with particular focus on budget and strategic planning. Cameron works to ensure that Interior's initiatives align with its mission to protect natural resources and support American communities. Earlier in his career, as a staffer to the late U.S. Senator Chick Hecht of Nevada, he was instrumental in passing legislation to create Nevada's first national park, expand Nevada's national forests, and make the first use of the Land and Water Conservation Fund to acquire water rights, in that case for Stillwater National Wildlife Refuge. He's a graduate of Dartmouth College and Cornell University. Acting Commissioner Cameron.
Thank you, Peter. I was going to suggest you hold off on the applause until after I spoke, just in case you want to change your mind. But good morning to all of you. It's a pleasure to join you today at CRWUA. I want to begin by thanking Assistant Secretary Travnicek and Carly for their thoughtful presentations and leaderships. Their insights have laid a strong foundation for the conversation we must continue, one rooted in collaboration, urgency, and shared responsibility. As we close this session, I want to speak plainly about where we stand and where we must go. This is actually my fourth immersion in the Colorado River, having worked for a Nevada senator, a California governor, and now twice in the Trump administration at Interior. We're all here because we understand the stakes. The Colorado River Basin is under real stress. A changing hydrology, prolonged drought, and growing demand have brought us to a pivotal moment. However, this is not just a moment of challenge, it's a moment of opportunity. When water is scarce, cooperation and willingness to try something new is not optional, it's essential. We've seen what cooperation can achieve. The 2007 interim guidelines and the drought contingency plan were not just policy documents, they were acts of trust. They were built on compromise, shared sacrifice, and a recognition that litigation is a path to division, not resolution. Let me be clear, cooperation is better than litigation. Litigation consumes time, resources, and relationships. It also increases uncertainty and delays progress. The only certainty around litigation in the Colorado River Basin is a bunch of water lawyers are going to be able to put their children and grandchildren through graduate school. There are much better ways to spend several $100 million. In the face of hydrologic changes, the time-consuming NEPA process, the looming start of the 2027 water year in just 10 months, and declining reservoir levels, delay is unacceptable. Instead, we must all continue to lean into the collaborative spirit that has allowed us all to move ahead in this basin in years past. That means being willing to make and adhere to uncomfortable compromises. Under this administration, Interior has been meeting frequently with the basin states. We've been flying out west about every other week since early April to meet with the 7 commissioners. Our approach has been to listen, to learn, and to try to stimulate problem solving. These meetings are not low-key. They are strategic, and as the diplomats say, typically involve a frank exchange of views. They allow us to surface concerns early, explore creative solutions, and reinforce the shared commitment that underpin and will ultimately, I am confident, lead to our collective success. Our own ongoing engagement with the tribes across the basin not only acknowledges the department's trust responsibilities to American Indians, but enables us to tap into the creative ideas and values of the people who have lived with this river far longer than those of us who have arrived on the scene a mere couple of centuries ago. Cooperation has worked in the past and is working now. The 2007 guidelines and the DCP have helped us navigate nearly 2 decades of drought. They've provided a framework for coordinated operations and shared shortages. And now, as we approach the end of 2025, we must work collaboratively to quickly shape what comes next. Time is getting short. The expiration of the current agreements is not a distant horizon, it's less than a year away. The time to act is now. That's worth repeating. The time to act is now. We must accelerate our efforts to build consensus, forge agreements, and ensure that a new agreement is in place before the current network of agreements expires. Only then can we avoid the disruptions that could jeopardize the health of the river and the communities that it serves. The future of the Colorado River, while informed by human experience, must anticipate what we can project about the future needs, the options that we might have available to us, and the constraints that we face. Crisis must become a catalyst for problem solving. We have the tools, we have the data and the knowledge, notwithstanding the deep uncertainty. We have the ingenuity. What we need is the will, the individual and collective will, to act boldly, to accept risk, to think creatively, and to prioritize the long-term health of the river and the communities it sustains. This is not just about water, as important as water is. It's about people. It's about agriculture, ecosystems, tribal nations, cities, industry, the economic futures of 40 million people. It's about ensuring that future generations inherit a river system that is resilient, equitable, and sustainable. So let me end with this. We can get there together over the next 2 months, but we must choose cooperation over conflict. We must resist the temptation to wallow in past perceived inequities. We must move forward and choose innovation over inertia. And we must choose a future where we all collectively have the tools to succeed. Everyone must give a little, or maybe more than a little, accept some calculated risks, make sacrifices and compromises that, while they acknowledge parochial needs, still advance the greater good of the river and the 40 million people who depend on it. In closing, I want to thank you for your time. I want to thank you for your attention. I want to thank you for your dedication to this river and the society that depends on it. Thank you so much.